All right, cool. Man, I was really, I'm sitting over here trying to get a hold of you guys, in the Messenger app, but for some reason I don't have internet. I'm like trying to get you guys to let me on because I had so much to say earlier, but.
Yeah, well, I unmuted you. I had you unmuted. And then I was like, yeah, well, we got Andrew on right now. I was like, Andrew, what's your take? And then Jeff just kept talking and talking and talking for you. So.
Sorry about that.
No, that was, I enjoyed it. That was, that was a good 5 minutes of radio right there, and I really enjoyed the views of the guy that called in, and, Jeff did a good job as well, so I just had some things to supplement what you guys are saying, but.
Spit them out, man.
Jump right in, but.
I'd love to hear it.
Oh, I don't even know where to start. It kind of lost in my thinking from when they were going on before, but yeah, I don't know. I tend to think this story has a lot more to it, and I think we're going to find out a lot more in the near future here. I think that this is a targeted assassination. I think that there are some powerful interests involved, and I think that this kind. I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I do have some articles coming out, but and I'm kind of hesitant to say it because I don't want to be wrong, but I think that there is a power struggle going on. I can't really get too much into it because it's speculation at this point. But once I can either prove it right or wrong. But I'm not going to obviously publish something that's speculation. But I think that this is another incident where somebody was used to send a message, or realizing that they could use it, for also a race war and say, oh, this was a hate crime and cause division, or like the caller said, not cause division, but amplify it because the division's already there. Then you have the whole issue with with the Confederate flag. Let me ask you this. How did this horrible act, this cowardly act of going into a church, targeting targeting blacks, complete hate crime, blatant hate crime. How does that turn into the issue of the flag? Now,
the media.
If you step back and look at it, and you say, okay, a state senator in the 45th most corrupt state assemblies, they're ranked 45 in, basically they're in the top 5. They're the 5th most corrupt state assembly in the nation, right? I forget who does the ranking systems, the grading. You can look it up online, but basically they scored an F in every metric that they use to measure the level of corruption, essentially. And they were the 5th, they're in the top 5. So you have that. You have a state senator being targeted. And the reason we know he was targeted is because Dylan Storm Roof, he came into the church and he asked for him. He asked for him by name. He said, "Oh, I need to see the reverend. I need to see the senator." So right there it tells you he was on a mission, right?
Yeah.
But this is how they do it. They know when these missions are created, they always have a backstory. It goes back to plausible deniability, right? Because this way you can never completely prove that, oh no, this was a deep project, a black project carried out by the intelligence agencies for, a whole different reason than we're led to believe. You can never really prove that, because if you try to, you're just called crazy, right?
Right.
So that's basically from the evidence I've gathered, that's what it's leading me to believe. And it's too bad because, it's much, as bad as it is, it's much easier to say it's just a hate crime. Because, you know what, it's sad to say, but even Obama said it, and it's probably one of the only things he's been right about. He said, in no other country does this happen. In no other country do these level of hate crimes happen, right? And I agree with him, and the reason for that is because they don't have the CIA, they don't have the Office of Naval Intelligence, they don't have the all the intelligence agencies to do this, the DHS and everything else, But no, on a serious note, it doesn't happen anywhere else. It happens in America.
Right.
And it's.
So I mean, I'm kind of half joking, but is it any coincidence that all these killers have the same haircut? Have you noticed that?
No, you're actually right about that, and it goes back.
Absolutely, they all have bowl cuts.
Believe it or not, I think it goes back to what Jeff was saying. This is the thing, right? People don't want. A lot of people in the alternative media, they don't want to get into conspiracies, right? They're afraid if they get into conspiracies that they're going to, hurt their reputation, or people are going to look at them funny, or, I just talk about being free, and I don't get into conspiracies. I'm too good for that. That's the attitude I see a lot.
Right.
Why not? Why can't you get into conspiracies? The whole world is a conspiracy, right? Everything constantly, day in and day out, is ran by a conspiracy. Somebody's always trying to get over somebody else, to get more powerful. That's how the world runs, and that's very unfortunate. I don't want it to run like that, but the fact of the matter is that's how the world runs. So a lot of people don't want to talk about it. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of these situations, probably upwards to 90+%, I would say, the truth is stranger than fiction.
Right.
Everyone says, well, it's, these conspiracy theorists always have these crazy explanations, and they want to think they have special information so that they feel special to justify their worldview, and think they have a special part, a special place in the world, and this and that. And it's like, yes, because these things don't just happen, right?
No, I happen to agree. I don't believe in coincidences. I know for a fact that, as you say, everything's a conspiracy. I mean, it's almost true when you start, realizing whatever point in time that you start realizing that, you look at one conspiracy and start looking at everything, and, everything kind of ties together, and the truth is stranger than fiction. So
I was looking at an article today. I believe the Inquisitor put it out, and it was just too funny, man, because they were basically trying to debunk any claims of a conspiracy, right? And it's funny because they actually named everything. Went down the list of every conspiracy theory out there right now to date involving the church shooting, except for the active shooter drill. Somehow they just passed that one up, right?
Sure.
They didn't mention that, right? Alex Jones, right? Alex Jones didn't mention that. In fact, I haven't seen too many people who are usually yelling and screaming about false flags talk about it. So I don't know if they're just not seeing it. I mean, that's kind of hard to believe,
Right.
But I just find that very, very weird. So the Inquisitor, they went right down the list and named off every theory that has come to light. Anything anyone in their basements come up with that reached the internet, they named it. And it's kind of funny because when you read it and you click all the links and look at what people are saying, you're like, wow, this isn't too far-fetched. Almost every theory has some kind of level of believability. Like you can almost say, this looks like it could be real. You know what I mean?
have you a little off topic, but not really? Have you noticed a sway of people with every new incident that happens, like a step forward of new people questioning it? Like it seems like everything that happens, like you get new faces and new names and new people just questioning it and saying this isn't right and this is weird and this is odd and what's going on here, and I don't know. I just, like I said, everything that happens, I just notice that it seems like more and more people are, I don't know, questioning it.
Yeah, I think
questioning the official story.
I think, yeah, like I was on a radio show last night, and that was kind of brought up as well, that it's not necessarily that it's the idea of a conspiracy theory or a conspiracy is popular. I think it's more just a simple fact that people are realizing that other people around them, right, when these situations go on, other people are saying things like, oh, Illuminati, or, oh, New World Order, or, oh, false flag, and they hear their buddies talk about it. So one kid's over here in the corner while his two buddies are over there talking about a false flag. But the kid in the corner, he doesn't know what the hell is going on. He doesn't know what they're talking about. What the hell is a false flag? What's an active shooter drill? So his two buddies are talking about it, but he doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. So he goes home, he does the Google search, he's up for fucking 16 hours straight, and then the next time they talk about it, he's the expert all of a sudden. You get what I'm saying? So this sort of thing catches like wildfire, and a lot of people, I'd say 18 to 35 and maybe even older, they're really interested in it because they know, and they have known that the U.S. government and governments around the world are all corrupt. That you're kind of born knowing that. Or at least I was.
Right.
But so it's just now you have the information at your fingertips. You don't have to read for hours on end. You can watch a YouTube video, get some information, then go do your research on your own. And within 3 hours, you can learn a bunch of new pieces of information. So it's not that hard to do, and people are doing it.
I just want to add here, it's interesting you say that because I agree, Mark, and I'm noticing like more people are waking up to this and they're openly discussing it. And another thing I'm noticing is less people are criticizing the truthers. Like every time, for instance, the Boston bombing, when I brought that up, and I mentioned that, the drills and all the suspicious activity, I got a lot of criticism from friends in the past, saying, this is crazy. I can't believe you even said that. They're keeping their mouths shut now, It's like this shit keeps happening, and they're just like, maybe they're noticing a pattern.
I have people all the time, people that, and I've said this before, probably on your radio show, that I have people all the time who I would never, ever expect. I'd get a random message on Facebook, and of course I don't see it for like a month, But every so often, I'd scroll down, I'd read all my messages or try to get back to everyone, and I'd see somebody that I went to school with, in May, like, hey, Andrew, did you see this? And I'll click it, and I'm like, wow, what made them, how'd they come across that, or what made them, look for that, or, I ask them, like, what made you look for that, or how did you see that, or, why'd you ask me about it, And it's just It's funny because it really is, like, people who you would never expect are becoming interested.
No, you're right about that. I really believe that. I see it.
Well,
I see it every day.
That happened to me. It's the people that I went to school with that I didn't expect that are actually the ones that are, more interested in being informed in the stuff. You know what I mean? That's what I've noticed. The people that I thought might have got on board are the ones that really, I think some of them know, but I don't think they really care.
Right. I've had a kind of a belief system in recent years that it seems as though this spirit of whether you're into conspiracies or waking people up, whatever the case may be, libertarian, anarchist, conspiracy theorist, ufologist, anything really, in that field. I think it's kind of a rebellious personality, right? People who are natural rebels tend to be inclined to be interested in this sort of thing. And it's the people who are sort of in this learned helplessness or Stockholm syndrome. They lived sheltered lives maybe, and they're not inclined to challenge the status quo. And I know a few people like this, so I'm good friends with. And I've tried to break them for years, and they're unbreakable. I'm talking using like propaganda on them,
right.
doing the best I can just to get them to not to brainwash them.
Right.
Just to get them to think, just to get them to open their mind, and they just refuse, So I think it's kind of built in a way, but that's not to say you can't wake up somebody who is, you never thought would wake up. You can definitely do that.
Yeah, I think the actions that are going on with these events are waking them up mainly. They're recognizing what's going on. It's like a pattern that keeps replaying itself, these mass shootings.
Yeah, I wrote something down today just as a quote. Every so often I write down quotes just to use later. It was something along the lines of, the frequency of these events, the authoritarianism, the false flags, and all these sorts of events, these mass shootings. Whenever they lead back to government, those are the ones I'm talking about. These are happening more and more frequently, and they're more and more violent, and they're more and more. The media gets behind them more and more. So basically what I'm saying is these are becoming more and more frequent, almost to where it's becoming exponentially more frequent, right? Think about it. The past 2 weeks, think about it. You had the McKinney incident, right? What happened? Well, you had police brutality. You had racial divide. You had, the incident with race, right? So you had race and police brutality, right? Then you had the Dallas, Texas shooting. So what did you have there? You had an attack on the police, which the police came in and saved the day because they had military-style police equipment, right? So the police were then made the heroes just after they were the bad guys in Texas, right? During that, you had Jade Helm going on. And what's Jade Helm? It's to acclimate the public. It's to train, acclimate the soldiers, those involved, to a police state, right? That's going on. Then you have all these shootings. I read 49 people killed in Chicago? Is that what it was? Then you had, of course, the massacre at the church. And then you had people shot in New Jersey, 7 people. Think about this. The past 2 weeks have been, you couldn't follow all of it, right? You couldn't keep up with all of it. And then in the middle of all that, which you can't forget, is the National Defense Authorization Act. The Senate passed it as everything's going on. Indefinite detention, that's still there, right? So that's also kind of mixed in with all this. It's all a big web, and it's all intertwined. And like I said, the past 2 weeks it's been mind-boggling what they've been able to accomplish.
Because everybody's focusing on getting rid of the flag and focusing on nonsense.
Right.
Well, that's just it.
Right. Yeah, stick with us, Andrew. We'll be back. Take a break. We'll be back, everybody.
It's Tuesday, June 23rd, and here's some of the news beyond the headlines. Thousands of Syrians returned home from Turkey on Monday. Nearly 2,000 refugees, mostly women and children, crossed from the Turkish border town of Akçakale to Tel Abyad. It was the first time the crossing had been opened since Kurdish-led forces recaptured the Syrian town from the Islamic State last week. More than 23,000 refugees entered Turkey earlier this month, fleeing the fighting in northern Syria. Female UN peacekeepers are tackling gender-related violence in South Sudanese refugee camps. The officers work to improve services for victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence in displacement sites across the country. There's also been a push by the UN mission to recruit more female police officers. Women currently make up about 20% of the peacekeeping force in South Sudan. Illegal amber mining is threatening farmland in western Russia. Excavators search for the 50-million-year-old fossilized tree resin by shoveling through the soil layer in crop fields. It's a lucrative business since the global price of amber has increased tenfold over the past decade. Officials in Kaliningrad say more needs to be done to curb the illegal activity. Police are able to confiscate the machinery, but there's still no criminal punishment for the illegal extraction. India unveiled a new plan to add yoga to its national school curriculum on Monday. Secondary school students will be taught the course material, which is 20% theory and 80% practical. A national yoga competition will also be organized in 2016, where the best performing student will win a cash prize.
Exhale slowly, bending to the right side.
The announcement comes a day after Prime Minister Narendra Modi did yoga with tens of thousands to mark the first ever International Yoga Day. Check out the Vice News YouTube channel for more original reporting and documentaries from around the world.
Ну, линия разграничения, вот те позиции, которые за нами сейчас здесь закреплены, вот они здесь.
And welcome back to episode 106 of Authentic Enlightenment. I'm your host, Chris Perkins, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Jeff Giles, Mark Cummins, and Andrew Pontbriand. I might want to unmute Andrew, though. That might help, right?
That might help.
Sorry about that, Andrew.
Oh, that's good.
All right. There. Computer's lagging a little bit. Anyway, so where did we leave off? I don't even remember.
Either do I.
I don't know. It's probably something to do with the Charleston shooting.
I was talking about the rate at which people are waking up.
Oh yeah,
that's what it was.
That's right.
I actually thought of something though, right when we was coming on air. Andrew, what about the drugs this guy was taking? Did you touch base on that at all? I mean, I've heard reports that he was taking Xanax, he was taking methadone. I don't know if any of the stuff was prescribed. It sounded like it was kind of recreational use to me, but for early reports that I was reading.
Right.
Well, what I saw, I mean, I could be wrong. Now, they did say he was taking psychotropic medication, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's taking something, yeah.
Well, okay, so I did see that he was taking Suboxone. Now,
Okay.
I don't know if he is taking anything else. It's kind of my fault for not looking into that, but I do know that they said he was taking Suboxone. Now, here's the thing, right? If he was only taking Suboxone, right? They were saying, I kept seeing these headlines where they were saying, the shooter Dylan Roof was taking medication that causes violent outbursts. I don't know what that's all about, but I know for a fact that Suboxone does not cause violent outbursts. So I don't know if there was a mistake in the reporting, or if he is on other psychotropic medication.
Taking something else that could cause that. Right.
Yeah.
And also taking Suboxone.
Right. So, I mean, for those who don't know, Suboxone is an opiate maintenance medication to curb withdrawals. And it doesn't, it's not like something where, like a psychotropic medication or an SSRI. It's not in that class of medication.
It's an opiate blocker.
Right.
Basically.
But I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of these people who look like they just graduated from MK Ultra, they all look the same. And I wanted to also point this out. It's the same exact storyline. We've heard it with, we heard it with the Aurora shooting, right? We heard it with Adam Lanza, and now we heard it with this kid. The exact same thing. And what I was actually working on today, and I'm kind of pissed. I don't know what happened on my computer, but it deleted the file I was working on. I was putting together a little segment where it was showing how the news said, James Holmes was very non-emotional, very deadpan expression on his face, no emotions as he sat in court. And then it said, Adam Lanza was a boy who showed no emotion and just very quiet, and then of course, now with Dylan Roof appeared in court today with no emotion, and, it's the exact same thing, right? So, I mean, again, right, it's not only that, but it's just like, what is it where all three incidents, right, Sandy Hoax, the church shooting, and the Aurora shooting, right? Why is it that those three storylines are basically the same minus racism, right? Now, this kid, is obviously a racist. I mean, he read the manifesto. We know that he was visiting that website. What is it? The CCOC or whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about?
No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what you're talking about.
I don't.
Yeah, it's the website he was visiting, where he got all his ideas. Now, also, the news said that they quoted him as saying, no, I'm sorry, it was in his manifesto where he said that he came across the website, and basically that's where he got most of his ideas. Now, he said he came across the website kind of on accident, and it happened when he did a Google search. He typed in, and it quoted him saying, blacks killing whites, or black man kills white guy, or something like that. And so I typed that in. Like, I took the quote exactly as they said it on two different sources, right? And I took that quote and I Googled it. And that website didn't come up for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages. It didn't even come up. So I said to myself, well, that's kind of weird, right? I couldn't find it. So how is it that this kid typed it into the Google search and it just doesn't come up, right? So I tried different variations of the quote. I couldn't get it to pop up. So for him to have just stumbled upon it first before anything else is just kind of weird.
Right.
Maybe there's some kind of algorithm change because, the news obviously went viral and people are probably typing that in. I don't know if that's a factor, but to me it would seem that would actually bring it up to the top of the Google search results more.
Right. Well, by all rights, it would. That's interesting. There's
a lot of caveats.
There's a lot of holes in it for sure. I've seen that right from from day one breaking. As you said, it's very similar. Everything seems like almost like we've seen this before. It seems like there was something else I was going to ask you.
Well, again, here's the thing, right? There's no question that racism never went away, right? Racism has been around in this country for 300 years, okay?
Sure.
Ever since we had, or not we, I wasn't involved in it, but ever since, the elite took slaves from Africa and brought them to this country, and we had slavery, right? There has been racism, okay? And it hasn't stopped, because getting into the Confederate flag issue, if you want to call it that, and getting into the roots of slavery and racism and all that, and then associating it with the Confederate flag, which I don't think is acceptable in a sense. Again, it's always been around. Now, what I am getting at here is this idea that in the past 6, 7, 8 years, it seems to me that it's been more and more frequent, it's been in the media more and more frequently, and I can't seem to understand why. Of course we know racism never went away, but what is it that in the past, few years, all of a sudden it's just this major epidemic? You get what I'm saying? There's something behind that, and I think it's an agenda. People aren't saying that the government's trying to create a race war. They're not saying that, just because it sounds cool. They're saying it because it's happening.
Right. And, bingo. Like I was kind of saying to the callers, yes, racism has always been indwelled in this country. Absolutely, of course. It never went away. Anybody that says different is ignorant. But of course it is. But the media twists things, and it plays things, and it plays on people's emotions. And, people will sit home and they'll or whatever, they'll see something on television and they'll believe it, and, they'll go with it, and they'll say that, and no matter what it is, that, there's race wars and, fear and, so it's a divide mechanism. It just conquer and divide and conquer, rather. And you see waves of it throughout, let's say, I'm 35, so whatever, the last 20 years, I can see, where, it, like you just said, it ramps up, and then it'll it'll die down, and then it'll come back in the spotlight in the media, and but nobody can tell me that it's not the media that plays on people's emotions, and it sways the masses. I mean, it's just total control over them.
So okay, if you're in California, right? You're not going to kind of experience this sort of racism that happens in, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama. This sort of racism doesn't exist in California, not in the sense that it does in the South, right? Now, again, in the South, this racism has always been there. It's always existed going back to the time of slavery. It never really went away. But at the same time, it did. Okay, the average person, right? The average person does not have this mindset of I hate blacks or I hate whites or I hate, Chinese or Japanese, yellow skinned people, right? the average person doesn't really think that. Okay, it's a small, and I don't. When I say small, I don't mean a few hundred people. I mean it's a lot of people. Racism isn't a small issue; it's a big issue. Don't get me wrong, but again, it's this pocket of society that has harnessed this hate through kind of this genealogy, right, throughout history, and they've just never really evolved into the normal thinking, I think, where we recognize, a normal person recognizes the humans were all the same, right? Doesn't matter, skin color doesn't matter. Even culturally, we may be different culturally, but really you just appreciate that more, right? When I see something foreign to me in terms of culture, I appreciate that and I embrace it, like a normal person would. Right. These people who are very, reptilian brained, they get that through it's a teaching mechanism. You teach that, right? It's more or less a genealogy factor where the families will teach that. At least that's my understanding. So
sure.
Again, it's this pocket of society that never really got over it. So a lot of people kind of get this confused where they think the entire South is racist. It's not really like that, I mean, think about it. I'm going down to move to Georgia, in the next coming, few days, and I asked my friend, that lives down there. I'm like, how is it in Georgia? Do you see a lot of racism? He goes, yeah, I've seen it a few times, but he's like, most people that I'm friends with down here are black. I've met a lot of black people down here. So it's not like everywhere you go in South Carolina is this huge problem of racism. Again, that's why these people form, these white hate groups, right? They form these groups because they have to seek out members. They have to find members of that who's going to agree with them.
Right.
I got to recruit this guy, but you have to look for him. Or the kid who, his dad went to jail, but his dad always taught him to hate black people because he's, thinking primordially. This reptilian-brained way of thinking. He teaches his son to think that way. Then his dad goes off to jail, so the kid has no one else to identify with. So what does he do? He seeks it out, right? And then that's when he joins the hate group. So, I mean, we have to address these issues. But when the media comes out and says, they basically convince everyone that this issue of race is nationwide, and now we got to use it to separate blacks and whites, and we have to steer the narrative and divide everybody. No, it should not be like that. We should be looking at the media and saying, listen, the majority of us are not racist, okay? The majority of blacks are not racist. The majority of whites are not racist. The majority of us get along, right? The majority of us would, join together and fight tyranny. At least that's my belief.
All right, I agree. I'm going to back you up just a little bit in the media and racism and how easily they are to divide and conquer. If you look at the Middle Eastern folks and how kind of quickly post 9/11 the entire nation, I mean, you really couldn't find blacks, white. It didn't matter if you were Muslim or Middle Eastern. I mean, oh man, you were fucking quick to get labeled. I mean,
that's
real
a great
quick.
Point.
And to a lot of us that kind of see past that, it was like, well, wait a minute, number one, it's, not what we're being fed anyway, but let's just say it was. It doesn't, you can't just turn a whole side of the world, and that's what they did. They turned this nation against that entire section of the world and made it very easily to not see them as humans because, it's hard to kill other humans.
That's a great point. And again, that's a symptom of nationalism and statism, right? It's very, very easy to, have this attack happen, right? This attack, September 11th attacks, blame it on Islam, right? Radical Islam. Blame it on Muslims. Then have the war. Launch the war in the Middle East. Then you have these young men who are really just confused, but they're full of testosterone. They're amped up. They're pissed off at their country, that they've been taught to, the flag and this false sense of patriotism that they really don't understand, because it's all really just a lie. Because they don't realize they're fighting a war for banks. They don't realize they're fighting an imperialist war, right? They just think that they're doing it for, they think they're doing it for their brothers, their sisters, or aunts or uncles. In their minds, they are, right? But the system captures their mind, captures them, right, and sends them off to this war where they start to say, "Oh, these ragheads! I can't wait to kill me, or raghead." And they're not just talking about a terrorist. They're talking about men, women, and children who have nothing to do with Al Qaeda, right? Sure. And that's a good point, because that's the same idea that the media is playing now, where white people hate black people. No. You know what? I can't have a Confederate flag, and if I do, I'm a racist. That's not right, man. How about this? How about, because of my beliefs, or rather the facts of this country, what about if I start to say everyone who flies an American flag is, a Zionist banker, globalist, imperialist, right?
How about you break it down even more than that? How about just racist against Japanese people? I mean, you can't deny that.
Right.
Nobody can deny that. I mean, even if, I don't care how blind you are, read a history book. It's racist. It's a racist flag.
That's why I wrote that op-ed today, which has like 5,000 shares right now, which is pretty cool.
It's been making its way around.
There's a lot of people who understand that the Confederate flag. I made this basically. Some guy, I don't even know who he is, he's been targeting me because I made a post about the Confederate flag, right? And basically he's been targeting me, saying I'm a racist, saying that I'm like I denied slavery or something. I don't even really know. I wasn't paying too much attention to it, but so anyway, again, he has been captured. He is stuck in this belief that all black people are hated by white people. And he's stuck in this belief that a flag can actually be this connotation of hate, right? An object can have this certain corner of society. You can attach that to the flag, whereas a whole separate side of society looks at the flag in a whole different light. Okay, the perfect example of that is the Chinese sun symbol, right? The Chinese sun symbol was, for thousands of years, a symbol of peace, love, awareness, what have you, right? Reciprocation of love, the Chinese sun symbol, okay? Then the Nazis took it, and they completely corrupted it. I mean, you couldn't do a better job at corrupting something, right? Because when you see the Nazi symbol, it triggers this mechanism in your brain, like you see a Nazi symbol and immediately your brain just, bing, like a light bulb goes off, and the first thing you think of is death, hate, and destruction. But the original meaning of that was peace and love, right? So just because somebody uses a symbol to match their ideology doesn't really mean that symbol is by default that ideology.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you 100%, but I don't know. This is more simple than that to me.
Yeah.
To me, it's not even that complicated.
I completely agree, but I have to explain it that way because I'm going to get attacked. I know somebody's going to say, I heard Andrew on the radio and he's a racist, So I have to explain it.
Oh, absolutely. But you're going to get that anyway. I mean, you're just going to get that. It doesn't matter. brush it off.
I was surprised.
I
was surprised I didn't get a whole lot of comments calling me a racist for the article, even though there's nothing racist about it. But you know, just because of what I said about the flag. By the way, if anyone wants to read it, they can go to AuthenticEnlightenment.com. It's not very long. It's pretty straightforward and.
Yep, it's worth a read.
Well, it's very simple.
Simple reading.
Yeah, I mean, the radio show I was on last night, I got more in depth into this idea of the Confederate flag and, you know, the Civil War, slavery. You know, I mean, I guess I could do that now if you really wanted to, but we've talked about it before. But I honestly don't even really want to get into it because the way I see it, yeah, we need to address racism, but I think in a strange way, it's almost a paradox where you don't want to ignore it because if you ignore something, it doesn't go away. But
right.
If you keep feeding the animal is going to grow, right? So it's tough. And
well,
I don't want to
spend. Morgan Freeman has a great quote when he was talking to some interviewer, and they were talking about Black History Month, and he's like, "I don't want a Black History Month." You know what the quote I'm talking about? And at the end, he says,
I don't want to be reminded that.
racism?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. And at the end, he says, "Well, how are we going to stop racism?" And he says, "Stop talking about it." And that's it. I don't think he means like, you know, just avoid it like altogether because the shit is happening. I mean, that it is there. But I think he means like, you know, to the point where stop feeding it. Don't feed it anymore. If you stop feeding it, it will stop growing. I mean, that's it. It's that simple. And you know, people just buy into this fear. Oh.
Yeah. I mean,
talking about it perpetuates it.
Let me finish it. Let me finish off my part on racism tonight by saying this, right? And then I'm done talking about it. In my opinion, right, from what I've seen, and maybe it's because I grew up in a multicultural environment where I was where I grew up, whites were a minority. So maybe I have a biased view because I grew up where I was actually the one who was a victim of racism in a sense. And I've experienced that. I mean, that's just the truth. I mean, it's not that way for everybody, but at least where I grew up, that's what it is. But and again, then you go 4 miles down the road, and it's an all-white town. But the point is, just where I grew up. But I'm going to end it by saying this, right? In my mind, the media is exploding racism, making it way bigger than it really is. Because, again, by putting it all over the news daily and making everything about race, you're just reminding people about it. And then when you remind them, you're giving them the ability to harness the hate, right? Because now the hate's in front of them. And then what happens is you create opportunities for conversations about history. And although you don't want to deny the history, yes, the history is there, let's acknowledge it. But when you allow for that conversation to take place, you allow for the argument to present itself, right? And then, not that ideologies come out, but emotions or, you know, targeting the emotions, that comes out. But people tend to say things that they don't particularly understand, right? You know, the racist history that we have in this country is not very, very simple. Because, again, most of the slave owners were these elites who were fighting today, right? The rich people in society that were still fighting today, right? So, again, it's like, don't ignore it. Acknowledge the history of it. Acknowledge it's still going on today. But I think when I look at someone that's a racist, I look at them like they're weird. You know, I look at them like, you're a weirdo, man. Like, you have something wrong with you. You know, me and all my friends do, too. Like, I've met a few racists in my life, but from where I'm from, there's not a whole lot of racists. You know, like, I've had people who are racist towards me more or less joking, you know, like, oh, white boy, gringo, you know, things like that. But not serious racial stuff, you know. And I think, again, it's limited to and I shouldn't say limited, but you're going to find it more in the South because you have those families that are still in the belief that, you know, society should be segregated. You know, they never really got past that, and they have this, you know, reptilian brain where they're not thinking like a normal person should think. And it's because of the genealogies.
Right, exactly.
That's where I'm going to end it.
By genealogies, what do you mean exactly by that?
Well, you know, you have a guy, you know, Tim Bundy over here, who's in the KKK, and his dad was in the KKK, and his grandfather was in the KKK, and his great-grandfather, you know, so that is something that's passed down, right? So when a family is part of a hate group, how can you fix that, right? I mean, seriously, how do you fix that? Because let's say, you know, the whole family's in the hate group, and, you know, the mom gives birth to another boy, right? And then 10 years later, that boy, for whatever reason, realizes that racism is stupid, and it doesn't even make any sense, and he's just not a racist, right? Well, what's going to happen to that little boy? You think the family's just going to be okay with it? I don't think so.
My mom's father was in the Klan, and my mom ended up marrying a Jew. That kind of, I don't think it pissed off my grandfather, but it pissed off my grandma because she's a Baptist. You know, my mom's going to hell all of a sudden, and
well, that's not as radical then. I mean,
yeah.
You know, so there's situations like so that you just showed right there. You just proved it. My point right there. Somebody was in the Klan, and even they weren't that radical, because if they were, you know, if it's the Klan that I'm thinking of, you marry a Jew, you're gonna get killed or beaten, right? So, you know, again, it's just, I think it's limited to families and in some communities, right, where it's small towns, small communities that still have these ideologies of ancient times in this country, and since it's that small pocket, that small community, no one's there to come in and talk sense to them, because anyone who tries is either going to be kicked out of town by violence or force, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, again, there's no way for that ideology to sort of change or develop.